Context is more important than raw statistics when it comes to measuring the capability of anything, as we will prove by a quick examination of piston-engined fixed-wing aviation. As you can see, this video is not yet, well, it's just over 10 seconds, and we are already off on a tangent. It all ties together, I promise, but I need to frame my ideas with a real-world explanation of what I'm talking about before I can fully articulate why I believe the statement used as a title for this video is true. And, it helps pad out the view time, and you get to look at something pretty. Two things that are pretty. Well, multiple. There's going to be a lot of pictures that goes along with this. Just bear with me. Now, the image which has been gracing your screen since the video began is a Messerschmitt Bf 109, a piston-engined fighter in service to Germany during the second half of the 1930s and first half of the 1940s. As you see, it's in Spanish colors because YouTube. This plane first flew in prototype form in May of 1930. Something, 35 I think, but I've written 30 because I'm an idiot. Actually, it was nearly 60 years before I was born, give or take a few months. Do the math. Now, this plane, which has replaced the Bf 109 on your screens, is the Messerschmitt Me 262, a jet fighter which first flew under jet power. There was a prior attempt with propellers in July of 1942. This aircraft was better in nearly every way to the older Bf 109 fighter, which then acted as the standard German fighter aircraft. The new jet was faster, better armed, could fly higher, and get there faster due to having a higher climbing speed. It was almost a decade newer, new kind of propulsion, just better. If you look at a raw sheet of statistics, then you may assume that upon the introduction of the 262, Germany would cease production of the 109 in favor of this new aircraft which could outperform it and any other aircraft contemporary in service elsewhere in nearly every area. Sorry, but I replaced the pretty fighters with a very ugly flying boat because I was done with the military aviation and liked to scar people. But wasn't ready to move on to spaceships yet. We'll get there. Again, bear with me. You may be surprised to know, however, that despite being on paper such a massive advance in capability for Germany, that the 262 would never replace the 109, and that in fact production of the much older, and by this point limited fighter would actually continue at breakneck pace, while 262 production would never really rise that much. And if you look at raw statistics, this just doesn't make sense. Why would you keep building this clearly inferior fighter when you have this new one developed, ready to go? And if all we had to go on was these raw statistics, clearly one trumps the other. And it would seem to be a very, very puzzling decision, wouldn't it? Makes no sense. I mean, well, Germany in the period didn't make a whole lot of sense. But specifically in this example, which will later tie into the whole starships thing, we're not getting into the politics of 20th century Europe. Well, of course, this look at raw statistics is missing the wall of circumstances which would force the Germans into continuing production of the older 109, while also meaning that the 262s, which did enter service, often performed poorly. We're not going to get into it in any detail because Starship channel, not aviation. But the key issue facing the Germans at this time was lack of resources, which the nation was operating under, shortages of resources which were available, and this extended not only to raw materials but also to industry capable of building and producing these very complicated early jet engines, shortages in transportation from one location to another, shortage of fuel, shortage of available runways suitable to operate these new aircraft, which needed to be much longer than a piston-engined runway, and also shortage of pilots capable of operating these complicated new planes and who could get used to their unique handling characteristics versus pistons. Of course, this is simplifying things massively, and there have been multiple books written on the subject of German aircraft over the last 80 years or so. But as this channel is focused on starship reviews and not military aviation, I can only do so much. Watch Greg's Airplanes and Automobiles or Military Aviation History for more detailed looks at that topic if you want. Instead, I chose this example and summarized it massively, simplified it hugely, to set the stage for the rest of the video, which is coming to you right now, hopefully with a picture related to the topic of the channel, a starship. Hey, there we are with a pretty ship, it's the Constitution. It is one of the prettiest starships ever. Hopefully it's the Constitution, if I've done this right. If not, it's going to be something else, and just bear with me. So now that we have this example established, let us just switch back over into our comfort zone. The starship that's on the screen. There should be some kind of starship. Here we are, several minutes into the video, and just now getting into what the channel is about. It's literally in the name. I realize this, yes. Anyway, why does circumstance matter when looking at starships? Well, firstly, it makes reviews really boring. If I just listed a ship's statistics, the Miranda has this many guns, the Oberth has this many phasers and shields, and versus a D7, it would make the design seem either incredibly stupidly overpowered or stupendously bad, depending on raw statistics and what ship was being compared against. A good example of this would be the Miranda versus, a Dominion attack ship. Just listing statistics like this and then saying the ship was a punching bag in the Dominion War, taking huge losses against the enemies of the Federation, the Dominion and Cardassians, you would think the Miranda was a very bad design. But if we instead go over the history of the ship, its background, development, and the like, you will learn that the Miranda was a very capable design when it entered service in the 2270s. But a century later, the very dated class was just outmatched and took, unsurprisingly, high losses during the war. And that's without even adding in headcanon to fill out the review and make it more interesting than just adding a list of dates to the review. But even so, gets the point across that this was a very old ship in a very modern war, very different from what it was designed to do. Armed with this information, we get a more complete understanding of the ship we're looking at, and we also get a longer, more interesting video to boot. So you leave after hopefully, but probably, not watching the entire video, unhinged conclusion included, with a better idea of how things fit together and eager to watch more videos on related ships. It's all a trap, people. You watch one video, you watch another, and that boosts something? I need to figure out how this whole YouTube thing works at some point. Anyway, basically the point is, the more context you have, the better you understand the subject, whatever it might be, and the more you move on from just, this ship beats that ship because that ship doesn't have the things that this ship had. And it's also far more boring to do it that way. So yeah, that's basically it. Context instead of raw statistics gives you a better, more full understanding of how things work and connect, and why some things were done in universe and in the real world. The same logic applies in real life, and not just to German planes, but all things. Though in real life we don't have to add so much headcanon and inference, generally, some exceptions, history apply, as they do in all things. It's not a complicated idea, really. I don't think, and probably not one which needed a full video, but here we are. There's not going to be any kind of my normal unscripted conclusions, just because this whole video has been rather on the long end. But if you enjoyed it, give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new and you've somehow made it this far into a kind of off-topic video. I'll be honest, this video probably isn't doing well, and I'm just realizing that this video is having a kind of unhinged conclusion, but oh well, here we are. Anyway, subscribe to the channel if you want. There is a Patreon down below where you can support the channel, give ideas for future videos, vote on topics. I might start giving Patreons about a day's advance view of videos. That might be something I do. Let me know if you want that. You might. I don't know. If you want to pay money to see a video a day in advance, I'm not going to stop you. This has become an unhinged conclusion. Anyway, that's about all I have to say on the topic. Bye.